Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webcast. This is a webcast around building a successful mobile center of excellence. My name is Eric Carlson. I'm a partner here at Propelics. Just a couple pieces of housekeeping before we get started here. To ask questions throughout the webinar, we're going to have some time at the end to be able to answer questions. Please use the Q&A function on the WebEx window that should be in front of you, and those will come to me and I'll moderate those for Adam. Or the other option you can use is we're following Twitter on the the hashtag mobile strategy, and we can interact and we'll put some things out to folks on Twitter as well if that's easier for you. Just another point, since a lot of people ask, this is being recorded and this will be up on our website at propelics.com later today or tomorrow, and the slides will be available for download as well at that point. Just a little background on Propelics before we begin. Propelics creates mobile strategies and world-class apps for the enterprise. We are 100% focused on mobile for the enterprise, and some of those are customer-facing, but more importantly, we feel on some of the higher value use cases for your employees and your partners. We have a 15-year track record of providing enterprise-level strategy to the Fortune 500, and we help those organizations build strategies around technology use, but especially in taking advantage of disruptive technologies like mobile. And for the last 5 or 6 years, we've been working exclusively in mobile and mobile strategy. As a business, we're based out of San Jose with consultants across North America, and due to our client size and other types of things, many of our engagements include a global reach. Just a little bit about what we do. We really provide 3 levels or categories of services for our clients. The first one are kind of our mobile strategy services that are delivered at a fast-paced and workshop-based engagements, sometimes as quickly as in a single week. We've built our services and really our Kickstart projects around specific challenges that we see repeatedly in our discussions with our prospects, our clients. And so our processes are typically built around very repeatable processes, such as building a mobile app portfolio for organizations, helping our organization's IT groups build readiness for mobility, helping organizations with BYOD and managing unowned or uncorporate-owned devices as a part of a mobile strategy, assisting organizations with the idea around visualization and bringing application ideas to life before heavy dollars are spent in development or in integration work. And frankly, and lastly, on this topic around mobile center of excellence creation. The second area we help our organizations out is in the area of mobile advisory. And so these are really structured as block of hour type engagements, allowing your organization to use our people, our tools, our processes in more of an ad hoc manner, and then kind of away from a structured high energy workshop. These include speaking engagements, assisting with vendor evaluations. We help with RFP processes, policy definitions, sitting on or helping create center of excellences like we're going to talk about today. And finally, we tie all this back into our mobile application development team, where we focus heavily on great user experiences in mobile applications and really simplicity of mobile apps kind of working backwards towards complex enterprise systems. And finally, that kind of ties up with quality, reusable, and portable code on the back end and great applications. I'd like to introduce our speaker, Adam Bookman. Adam is a partner at Propelics, and he's been the brains behind many mobile product and program launches. He's advised organizations on mobile strategies for both the business teams as well as the IT organizations that support those business teams. And he continues to be a trusted advisor for some of the world's leading brands. He's a frequent speaker at conferences related to mobile and a host of other topics. I'll be back at the end of Adam's conversation to moderate your questions, so please, like I said, hit those up on the Q&A panel or on Twitter. And we have a special offer at the end of this presentation for folks who have joined us as well. So with that, Adam, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Eric, and welcome everyone to the webinar. Today, the plan will be to discuss how to build a successful mobile center of excellence. And we'll start off with why you need a center of excellence. And then I'm going to go through 5 considerations for your mobile COE. And then present you an approach for how you might go about starting and building out your Center of Excellence to ensure that it's successful. And as Eric said, we'll have time for questions at the end. So the first question is really, why do you need a mobile Center of Excellence? You know, given the proliferation of centers of excellence within organizations, and whether they're called Center of Excellence or a COE or a Competency Center or Center of Competency, and many other names, you know, the first question is, does the world really need another Center of Excellence? And unfortunately, we think in the mobile space, the answer is yes. And the main reason for this is that mobile is extremely disruptive. There are many new standards that need to be created. There's a tremendous amount of excitement about mobile that needs to be harnessed and governed. There are many new processes that need to be worked through. There are new technologies to consider. There are security threats and potentially heightened risk to the enterprise if the proper controls aren't put into place and governed. There's business innovation that needs to occur. And in the mobile space, just like any other innovation, it's quite difficult to innovate. And this can be accelerated and enhanced by having a framework provided by a mobile COE. So overall, there are many moving parts to a mobile COE. And having that type of organization will provide some much needed grounding. So what I want to do first is review some of the areas where an organization will benefit from a mobile COE, and this can help build out a business case for having it. One of the first considerations that any mobile team will come up against is, what devices are we going to support within our organization? Are we going to allow folks to bring their own devices, or are we going to provision devices to them, or are we going to do some combination of both? Are we going to support Apple or Android or Windows Phone or BlackBerry or all of the above? And not only what devices are we going to allow on our network, but also what devices and platforms are we going to build for? Both for internal apps where there's more control, you can decide, you know, we're only going to build for iOS or only for Android. And externally, what devices do we need to build for and when? And how do you make those decisions? And these are the questions that a lot of folks within organizations are struggling through, and having a central kind of governance group, a standards group, to help work through these decisions is very, very helpful. You know, in addition to devices and platforms, there's also the question of, you know, does it belong on a phone or a tablet? And how do you decide when, you know, is there a good way to decide when an app idea or a mobile scenario belongs on, you know, what screen size? Then there's the question of app versus web. Should we build a native app, a hybrid app, a web app? You know, what's the difference between all these things, and how do you decide? Many of our companies, many of our customers are, you know, going through these decisions many times over. And they're doing so because there's a lack of a central group that is providing a standard or providing a way to decide. Because it could be the case that in some cases it makes sense to have a web app, in some cases it really makes sense to have a native app, and hybrid might be the way to go in others. But how do you make that decision instead of reinventing the wheel each decision point? Providing those standards is what we think critical. You know, then you get to technology standards, and mobile has introduced a number of new acronyms, even doubling up on acronyms with MDM, which we used to call Master Data Management, but now it's known as, in the mobile space, Mobile Device Management. This is an area that can get out of control pretty quickly. So from mobile platforms, mobile development platforms, to mobile device management, to telecom expense management, these are decisions that often need to be made within organizations and are well positioned to be made within a center of excellence. There are a few reasons for this. One, these are very new markets, so they're not well known. They're very quickly moving in terms of acquisitions and even yesterday there was an acquisition. Zenprise was acquired by Citrix, and it seems like every week there's another acquisition where companies are merging or going away. And not in terms of M&A, but also in terms of functionality, where new functionality gets added all the time. And it seems like even within these Magic Quadrants that are released by Gartner and others, there's a constant leapfrogging effect that every 6 months, a Magic Quadrant or a study that was released a month ago can be quite different today or a month from now. One of the biggest things here, we often find that decisions on MDM and telecom expense management are made once within an organization, and typically that becomes the platform of choice, at least for the short to medium term. Although in a few of our customers, they have 5 or 6 or maybe 3 or 4 different MDM platforms for different parts of the organization, because they didn't have a team to centralize and they didn't really know what was going on. There was no one place to go to inform the organization that we have something in place. You might be experiencing that as well. But more significantly on the platform side, because most of these are open source tools, or a large majority are, where you can start by downloading a free version, it can often get out of hand in terms of the number of platforms that you already have within your organization. Without any standards, this number can grow. There are over 100 platforms on the market today. So it's something to really be careful of, because each of them have a little bit different technology direction, different skill sets are required. So you don't want to get too far down the road with multiple platforms. It can really disrupt your development life cycle, so the sooner you can make those decisions, the better. I think a COE is very, very well positioned to provide standards, even if it is more than one, even if you have a standard for hybrid app development and a standard for native app development. And then the other question is, do you need these tools? And how do you decide when we need to use a mobile app dev platform, or when we should just build an Objective-C app, right, in Objective-C? And then away from technology standards, there are a number of mobile policies that need to be created to govern the use of mobile and minimize the risk of mobility in the enterprise. In some organizations, this falls outside the mobile COE, but sometimes, we've seen it both ways. But the decisions made in the policy area affect other mobile decisions. For instance, device ownership policies can affect your device standards, or what you build for in the end. And often, even the other way around, we find it good to start with what are the mobile use cases, kind of have other key decisions impact your policies. So whether your policies are created inside or outside the COE, we'd recommend very close coordination between teams. Something that comes up a lot is mobile ideation, and this is really your mobile strategy and what apps you should build, what order you should build them in. How do you know if you have a good idea or not? Really, how do you innovate? How do you envision around mobile? And traditionally, this would fall outside of a COE. But in mobile, it's a little bit different. And we're seeing that there are a number of COEs that take on the business side, where they're helping business teams or business units ideate, envision, and then prioritize mobile ideas, and then rank stack those ideas across different groups, so you can have, the mobile COE can help drive the mobile roadmap for the organization. So, and the best mobile use cases bubble up to the top. And then there are a host of other things that are good reasons to have under control of the COE, and things that you'll want to consider. First is your mobile SDLC, and you probably, if you're a little bit along in the mobile life cycle, you realize that the the SDLC for mobile is quite a bit different than the SDLC for a traditional application development project. The speed of mobile application development can cause problems for traditional SDLCs, bumping up against long gating processes that just don't make sense for mobile, or huge documentation requirements that are unfit for mobile application development. On the mobile testing side, mobile will require changes in your testing processes. Even if you have a very mature testing teams, there are questions around what devices do we test for, what platforms do we test for, what versions do we test for, and do we even have these devices? How do we get them? How are we going to run testing? And the Mobile COE can help provide these guidelines for the testing team. User experience is something that is often overlooked by the COEs, but something that we think is extremely important to bring inside of COEs. And this is, having a standard style guide for mobile, having standard logos and color schemes and Photoshop images that can be reused across apps. Something that we found with a number of our clients is they'll have many apps on the external app stores, on internal app stores, and they'll have very, very different look and feels. And this can be very disruptive to your brand. So not only having a group to drive these standards, but then creating a repository where you can share these standards is something that's very well suited for a center of excellence. And then finally up here, our mobile web services. In the enterprise, one of the biggest roles of mobile, one of the biggest kind of gotchas in mobile is connecting to enterprise systems and grabbing data out of multiple enterprise systems and then displaying that data nicely and, from a performance perspective, making sure that there's no lag in performance, and securely as well on a mobile app. This often requires changes to the way that your web services are structured using different web services standards, and these standards can be driven by your center of excellence in conjunction with your already established enterprise info management teams. So kind of to sum up the why, there certainly is a lot to consider when you're undertaking mobile, and there's a lot of newness when it comes to mobile. And you can see here on this slide just a number of the things, some that we didn't even talk about today, like mobile app inventory, how you handle help desk for mobile, wireframing and prototyping for mobile and standards around that, governance and KPI for mobile, mobile analytics, version control. A lot of these things, they're just nuances to what you're currently doing today that a COE can be extremely helpful for, either as a repository or as a coach to different parts of the organization, so you get consistency across the organization. One thing that we've seen come up over and over again in our clients is that if you don't define the mobile standards in the COE, others will do so, and they'll struggle to do so. There'll be groups going off and evaluating their own platform tools or figuring out their own ways to decide if it should be an app or a native app or a hybrid app or what devices to support. And when these decisions get made, they're very hard to roll back, and it'll be very, very difficult to converge. So that's the why. And what I want to do now is move on to the how. So what we've done is put together 5 considerations for building a successful mobile center of excellence. The first, which is absolutely critical, is defining the reach of the COE. So this might seem quite basic, but it really frames up the entire center of excellence. So what are the drivers for the COE? What do you want the COE to do? Is this an IT COE? Does it drive business decisions like business innovation that we discussed? Is it both? Does this cover only internal apps, or does it cover only external client-facing apps or customer-facing apps, or does it do both? What's the reach in terms of geography? Does it cover all lines of business or only certain lines of business? Making these decisions is going to be very, very critical for everything that you do down the road in rolling out your Center of Excellence and having these decisions up front. Even if, down the road you're going to expand your COE, is very important. On top of defining the reach, we also want to look at what type of COE do we want to be. We've identified 3 mobile COE models, and we think it's really important to clearly define and articulate how deep we want to go in terms of the services that we provide as a Center of Excellence. The first model that we see out there that most COEs incorporate is the repository model. And this model is essentially a repository of mobile best practices and information on standards, tools, templates, a place where people can go, whether it's on a SharePoint site or a mobile site or some place where folks can go to grab the latest standards and someone to talk to about those standards. The second model is the coach model, and we see this quite often as well, where the Center of Excellence becomes a competency center to provide mobile expertise and provide some oversight for the organization, helping groups with their mobile application development, their mobile decisions. Even if they're not the ones, if the COE isn't directly doing the work, they're out advising to the different groups as a trusted advisor. And this helps provide some consistency throughout the organization. And finally, the manager model, where this type of model really concentrates on mobile governance responsibilities and may even have direct management of mobile projects or take on key mobile projects. We're seeing in many organizations where we're helping build out the COE that the mobile COE takes on the largest mobile projects, the most innovative ones, the ones that cross different business units, and really becomes the champion, often providing case studies to other areas, very tangible case studies in the form of apps of what can be done. And some COEs provide a mix of these, so it's very important to define which one you want to be, and then communicate that out appropriately. The second consideration is to have a very good understanding of the current state. And knowing where you are today and what you're going to run up against when you go out and create your mobile COE can save you a lot of headache down the road. So we recommend to our clients the idea of a current state maturity assessment in the areas that pertain well to your Mobile Center of Excellence. So that's looking at both business side when it comes to mobile strategy, mobile envisioning, all the way through the different areas that we discussed, like enterprise information management, IT delivery and support, your policy definition, project governance, UX standards. Knowing where you are today can help you gauge how much work there is to do to build up the Center of Excellence. And it will also give you a solid overview of your current state maturity in these areas, which will then help you define how much you can really bite off when it comes to your Center of Excellence. What's reasonable for your Center of Excellence to do today versus sometime in the future. Knowing that your Center of Excellence will evolve, and whatever you define it to be today doesn't mean that in 3 or 6 months it has to be the same way. This will just give you a little bit of a sense of a report card of where you are. When you understand your reach and your current state, the next thing that we recommend is to very clearly define the mobile COE vision, mission, and goals. Just like you would in any other Center of Excellence, you want to sit down and then socialize with your executive team and then eventually with the business units that you're going to support what the vision for the COE is, what do we want to become, what do we do, what is our mission, and then what are our short and long-term goals and objectives. And we think it's very, very critical to define your objectives and keep them short-term. At least have some short-term, so because mobile's happening so quickly, have something that you can roll out right away and really make it iterative, probably more iterative than you would in other Center of Excellences across the organization. and spend time defining your critical success factors. How are we going to know that our COE is successful? What KPIs can we use to prove out the COE? What can we monitor? How are we going to know that we're performing as a group? Based on your definition of your vision and your mission and your reach, just how far you're going to go, how much you're going to take on as part of the COE, you can then start to define the optimal org structure to support your mission. When it comes to a mobile center of excellence, our advice is to keep it lean, to not create a large headcount, at least initially, within your center of excellence for mobile. And this is kind of unlike the plan for many PMOs or other competency centers when it comes to business intelligence and enterprise information management. In the mobile world, what we find works best for mobile COEs is to keep it kind of federated or hub and spoke type model, where a lean team in the COE is kind of managing relationships across already existing teams, and together defining how mobile will impact current processes and maybe change current processes, and then how we're going to roll those out to the organization. When it does come to roles within the COE, the key roles that we typically see and recommend are a COE lead, someone to head the COE, a technical architect to understand all the technical components kind of across many areas, security, enterprise information management, architecture, testing, a mobile-specific architect, and often we see being added to COEs a mobile UX specialist who can help the different teams who are coming up with their mobile apps with UX best practices for mobile and UX standards within the organization. And if your COE is taking on business aspects, then we recommend having a mobile strategist as part of your COE. But you certainly don't have to start with a 5-person headcount. Many COEs that we work with are starting with a 1-person headcount, and maybe 1 to 3 people, but then with really good relationships with different areas, and then growing out the team as the mobile COE takes off. The fourth consideration is to have a solid roadmap when you're thinking about building out your COE. Really identify the tactics that you need to achieve, to work on, to meet your overall strategies, to meet your mission, and come up with a tactical plan to do that. And in our process, what we do in building a roadmap is in each of the key areas of that maturity model that we saw, from mobile strategy to enterprise information management to testing to mobile support, we map out tactics that are necessary to get those areas up to speed, to establish those processes, to build those skills, to choose those technologies. And then just knowing that there's so much to be done and we can't do everything at once, we go through a prioritization process where we map out which of these tactics has the most value to the organization, will help us reach our goals the soonest and the organization's goals the soonest when it comes to mobile. And we prioritize them based on value, and then based on business and technical readiness. So if we did this, would the organization be ready to accept it? And then the level of effort and cost. Doing so allows us to create phases for our Center of Excellence build-out. And what we see is we often have a combination of just foundational elements that, regardless of their complexity, they just have to be done in order to build out a successful mobile COE. And then some quick wins, some things that can help maybe current mobile projects that are underway, some things that we can do right off the bat in establishing a repository and populating it with some initial standards that can alleviate some short-term pains, and then some mid and long-term items. Here's an example of some of the particular tactics and how they're organized within the overall roadmap. And we recommend that you think in terms of months, when it comes to rolling out a mobile COE, not in terms of years. In other, in past lives, when we've helped companies build out their PMOs, we're often building 3-year plans. In the mobile COE world, when we've helped our customers, we're often building out year-long plans, and then we're making the iterations anywhere from 1 month to 1 quarter long in terms of our phases for building it out, and we keep it very, very iterative. We often look back at what we did after the first phase. We go back and we look at what's on tap for the next phase, and after 3 months in the mobile world, a lot has probably changed, so we reorganize, we reprioritize, and then we go forward. And then finally, probably not surprising, we recommend that it's important to get started right away with your standards, with your governance around mobile. Don't wait. We talk a lot on Propelics.com about the Wild West of mobile app development, and I can tell you, just being out to a number of our clients and prospects, that it's happening. There are folks going off and they're creating their own standards, they're creating their own apps, they're using multiple development teams, they're using multiple different types of tools, and really it's not because they want to do that. I think it's mostly because they don't have a place to go to grab those standards. And a mobile COE and a well-communicated mobile COE that people know is out there that can help them would be really, really helpful for many folks in business lines across the U.S., across the world. So here are our five considerations. There are plenty more. We write a lot about that on our blog on Propelics.com, so have a look. And we'd be happy to answer any questions for you. And like Eric mentioned, use the Q&A function on WebEx to ask some questions. Now I want to turn to the approach that we've used to help organizations be successful with their development of their mobile center of excellence. So the first place to start is to understand the components of your mobile COE. Really focus on the business drivers, on the reach of, why we're creating this COE, what is it there to govern, how far are we reaching with this COE, and then establish the critical areas. And some of the areas that are up here are some of the key components, and each of these have very, very big deep dives. So you'll have your mobile technology direction, which can include your app dev platforms, your MDM, your telecom expense management, your testing tools. You have your mobile architecture that your COE will definitely, major component of the COE to provide guidance around your mobile architecture. Security, and security is an interesting area because this is one that often falls outside of the COE, but you have to be so interrelated with your security team that we often recommend kind of creating one team or really tying the mobile security team and the mobile COE at the hip. Mobile app portfolio, the COE has to have a very clear understanding of what apps are being developed, what apps are being considered, what is the inventory of mobile apps within the organization, and that goes into there's some governance components to that. And also mobile SDLC we think is a really good area, and there are lots of components to your mobile SDLC from your requirements all the way to design to testing that need to be modified a little bit to fit mobile. So here's how we recommend kind of launching a mobile center of excellence. We've come up with this idea that tends to work very, very well of separating your mobile center of excellence launch into 4 distinct steps. The first step is your planning phase. And that's doing a lot of what we talked about in the considerations today around building out your mobile center of excellence. That's spending the time up front to define your charter, to define your scope, to clearly lay out your mission and objectives of the Center of Excellence, to understand your current state, and then to come up with a launch plan. for this piece, we call this our Mobile Center of Excellence Kickstart, and we typically do this in terms of time frame. Just to give you an idea, depending on the size of the organization, some complexities, anywhere from 2 weeks to 4 weeks in getting your COE kind of kick-started. Then we get into the detailed design, and the detailed design is where you build your communication plan, you build out the framework for your COE, including the standards, the rules of engagement, the different policies. You're interacting with a number of different teams. You're coming up with your technology standards, maybe doing some vendor evaluations and decisioning around technologies that we're going to standardize on. This can take anywhere from 3 weeks to 6 weeks. And at that point, you should be ready to roll out your COE. We typically recommend that you don't go live to the entire company all at once, that you pick and choose either projects that are currently going on or about to start that would really benefit from a COE to pilot, or focus on 1 or 2 business units to get going. And then after you've tried out some of your processes, then it makes sense to turn your COE into steady state operations where you're out there across the organization. So from planning to design, getting it rolled out, it's a couple-month process, and piloting. We've seen organizations where they've kept this quite iterative kind of design and pilot and steady state. So this model seems to work very, very well. Just delving into the Kickstart process a little bit. So when we're at the beginning stages of helping a company define their COE, we run this 2 to 3 week Kickstart where we facilitate the direction setting and the scope definition of the Center of Excellence. We look at the current state across a number of areas, like I discussed a few slides earlier, and come up with a report card around where you are in terms of maturity in each of those areas. This leads into the vision, objectives, and org structure, as well as, and then that leads in nicely to our requirements roadmap. And then from there, we're able to provide a detailed design plan and then next steps for COE launch. Something that is pretty beneficial about the Propelics process is that because we've been through this so many times before, we have templates and best practices in each of these stages, in each of these areas. So when it comes to a mobile SDLC or a COE charter or a mobile testing plan, in each of the areas that we discussed, we have pre-formed best practice templates that can help you get going, that get you 80% of the way there. We've also run vendor evaluations in each of these areas and have vendor scorecards, and some of them are available for free for you on our website under the resources section that you can check out. We have an RFP template up there for MDM providers that has been really helpful to some of our customers. And we have just a tremendous amount of IP that can help you accelerate the development of your mobile COE and make sure that it gets out there as quickly as possible. Because like I said before, the sooner that you get it out there, the quicker people can benefit from it, and they'll be relieved, frankly, that they don't have to make these decisions on their own. Eric, I think at this point I'm going to turn it back to you and encourage people to ask some questions, and we have a few minutes left for some Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Adam. And just to follow up on the offer we mentioned before and kind of following up on Adam's conversation on the Propelics Kickstart, a lot of things that you saw here in that last process flow was related to our Mobile Center of Excellence at Kickstart. You can check out more about that on our website at propelics.com/kickstarts. You'll see it there, along with some of the other ones that you're seeing here in the bottom around mobile app rapid prototyping and some other types of things. A lot of times we do workshops with our clients and follow that up with some mobile advisory services where we're helping them out with additional documentation and other aspects of their mobile strategy. And we're doing a special offer now for a bundle of mobile advisory services kind of tacked on to the purchase of one of our Kickstarts. And so feel free to reach out to us via these methods or through our website at propelics.com. So we do have some questions coming in, and some of those in the QA window. And so if you have any ones that you'd like to be able to add, please send them to me. But we had a few come in that are all kind of similar to the same structure. And so, Adam, I'm just going to kind of pull this together. But a couple of questions were related to where should this Mobile Center of Excellence sit within an organization? Under like what type of group should that sit in? And specifically, what type of resource should head that MCOE? Is that technical or is that business?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it varies. What we're seeing probably most often is that the COE lives in the IT organization, and I'm not necessarily certain that this is the best place for the COE to live, but I think if there is a spot in your organization that bridges business and IT, I would say that's the best spot. Often we're seeing a COE live in an innovation group, but probably most often in IT, which is fine. And from ahead of the COE, this person, it is a good mix out there, Eric. People come from, senior folks in the IT world, but who have good bridges into the business, or folks from the business side, business leaders who have good hooks into IT. And I think it really is a relationship type job. So someone who does have to, especially if you go with the federated model that we discussed, someone who does have to create and maintain relationships across a number of groups, both business and IT.
Okay. And along that same line, another question from Dharma is, can the MCOE be integrated into enterprise architecture? Is that one of those possible groups that it could go into?
Actually, I was discussing this with one of our clients yesterday, and typically the answer is no. That enterprise architecture is one aspect of the COE, but really is only one aspect. We also had a discussion the other day with another client of whether this can be integrated with the security team, with the team that's handling MDM. And again, I think it works the best if it's separate, especially if you're taking on some of the business innovation functions in your COE. I think housing it outside but maintaining very close relationships is the way to go.
And Mike asked a good follow-up question to that. Should your mobile COE be a part of kind of a larger digital COE, or is it really a separate group away from what else is going on the digital side?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And kind of the answer probably is it depends. I would probably recommend that it be separate to your digital COE. Your digital COE is going to have a lot of other considerations, including kind of branding, communications. Often your digital COE is external facing, while mobile, we recommend that mobile strategy often be incorporated into your digital strategy or be a strong part of your digital strategy. The things that we're considering as part of our mobile COE are separate, and there's enough to deal with when it comes to a mobile COE. If you just look at the considerations, all the things that we went through in terms of creating a mobile COE, that having a separate group just to focus on mobile within the organization is very helpful, and not making it too big.
Getting away from the structure and the location, we've had a few questions come in around kind of FTEs and the structure of team members on the COE. So a question is that we typically can't afford to hire a full-time employee just to man the COE, or a group of employees man the COE. What's a reasonable number of hours that we can ask from folks in other areas to be a part as a virtual SME on the COE? Sorry, too many acronyms there, but what's a reasonable percentage of time that we ask from those other virtual members?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you need to commit to your COE and have at least one person full time to be the coordinator of all the different groups. Sometimes, for a couple of our clients, the Propelics team is running the COE for the organization, kind of as kind of transparent to different folks, but we're the ones who are running the COE. But this is a commitment from other groups, and that's why we talk about understanding the current state and current state maturity, and sometimes that has to be taken into account into what the focuses of your COE and what it actually does, because you will run across parts of the organization that just don't have the time at this point to help you create processes. And these are, sometimes that's okay. You can push those out for a couple of months and make that part of, kind of the next iteration of your COE. But often it's an upfront creation task that you can augment the team with external resources to help create your mobile SDLC processes, your mobile version controlling systems. There's just some decisions that need to be made and standardized, and then from there, your smaller team can go off and run it.
Great. Alex asked a great question. He asked, should the COE be responsible for deciding what apps are valuable or not that are coming out of business teams, or are they just a resource to ensure consistency?
Well, that's a great question, and I think the business team really needs to decide what apps are the most valuable to the business, but the COE can be really helpful in driving innovation, in facilitating mobile envisioning sessions and providing a framework in order to prioritize those ideas. But I think the actual prioritization has to come from the business side. What we've seen is that there is often, some of our clients either struggle with innovation, or within different business units, they have very different ways of innovating and prioritizing their ideas. And then they bump up against each other, and the COE can be a force that drives a process that is standard kind of across the different business groups. But just to sum up there, I think that the business team has to be the ones who are ultimately doing the prioritization. What the COE can help with, though, is on the technical side of what's this going to take technically to build and drive some of that level of effort.
Great. Ryan asks, what is the best interaction model, or what should be the interaction model between a PMO and a mobile center of excellence?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Thanks, Ryan. We've been talking to a lot of companies lately who want to build their own PMO, kind of bring project management into a mobile COE, and it's something that we strongly recommend against. We don't think it makes sense to have a separate project management organization and kind of away from your PMO built within your mobile COE to govern and manage mobile projects. What we do strongly recommend is to coordinate with your PMO to think through the mobile gating process, the approval process, how you get through mobile steps, and these often need pretty radical changes for the mobile world. Just due to the speed of mobile development, we've created a number of apps that have gone from idea to go live in a matter of 1 to 2 weeks, and companies are doing that all around the world, and it's really hard to follow a standard mobile gating process when you need like 1 to 2 weeks or 3 weeks lead time for different steps in the gating process before things can be approved. So working closely with your PMO is the best bet. Keeping it separate, its own organization, not building that infrastructure in your COE would be the recommendation.
Great. Dharma asked another great question, very simply, yes or no, should we build an ROI-based business case for mobility initiatives?
I think that it's important to consider the ROI of mobile initiatives, absolutely. That you have to ensure that whatever you're building helps you reach a certain goal. And it might not always be, money related, but you have to think of, is this going to help us? What are we doing this for? Is it going to help us acquire new customers? Is it going to help us sell better? Is it going to help us retain our customers? Is it going to increase customer satisfaction? Is it going to help us become more productive as an organization? Is it going to reduce operational costs? You don't want to do mobile for the sake of doing mobile. You want to do mobile for the sake of augmenting your company's strategy and really helping you reach your company's strategy faster through the use of the mobile channel. So I think an ROI is pretty important. When it comes to the mobile COE, it can be difficult to come up with an ROI for a COE because a lot of it is just infrastructure in nature. It's just what we need to have in place so we don't duplicate decisions. And sometimes it's hard to come up with a cost for doing that, but it is foundational for an organization and something that is the right thing to do.
Christy,
sorry, that wasn't a yes or no answer.
Christy asked a great question and something we deal with very much on larger organizations. She asked, we have a decentralized IT organization with regional IT teams doing their own development. What is the best way to keep decentralized teams engaged with a mobile COE? Yeah, I think that is a great question, and we run into that all the time. And I think the best way is through communication. Communicate, and then communicate again on what your COE does, how the COE can help. We see COEs running brown bag sessions or, kind of lunch and learns around different topics in mobile. We see COEs going out and, visiting with the different parts of the organization, different IT teams to help them just with what's new in mobile, what's coming up, how we're innovating, what other, case studies of what else is going on within our organization, what we think are best practices outside the organization, having a centralized repository where people can go to and just people know to come and grab information from, and having a way to monitor that people are actually doing it, and a way to know that if it's slowing down, how can we react and get more interest from these areas. But I think that you'll find if you're providing, the right standards, the right policies, you're making their lives easier, that they're going to come to you. Great. Toby is up next. He asks, should the MCOE or the Mobile Center of Excellence be responsible for application development itself, or just as a approver or standardized role?
Yeah, that's a great question also. And the answer again is, unfortunately, it depends. We're seeing both models, and I think it's still up for grabs what works the best. When I spoke before, I was saying that we often see that in the manager model of the COE takes on some key mobile initiatives, and often they're the ones, kind of the bigger mobile initiatives that they're taking on, the ones that cross business lines, the ones that really make sense to, kind of these showcase projects that can then give other folks in the organization ideas. These are the standards for our branding. This is the way that we can really create a nice UI. This is kind of the showcase of how we can use a new platform that we just purchased. I don't think the mobile COE should take on all development. I'm not sure it ever makes sense to build up that much, that big of an organization. I think the mobile COE, as you roll it out and become more mature, will work better as an advisor. But initially, taking on some application development is a way to disseminate standards.
Okay, and I have one more. And this question is, what role can the MCOE play in the definition of mobile policies? Is the mobile policy definition a core function of the MCOE, or is it really more of an approval role?
Yeah, well, I think the Mobile Center of Excellence, depending on what types of policies, when it comes to acceptable use policies and device policies and expense management policies and security policies, these often are falling outside of the role of the realm of the mobile COE. But we think the mobile COE should be involved in the formation of those policies and reviewers of those policies, and really kept in close contact when it comes to changing those policies and how that will impact the rest of the organization and what the COE is trying to do in terms of standards. But other policies some policies should live in the COE, and these are probably your policies around when you do apps versus web, what platforms to build for, your policies around testing, your SDLC-related policies, your policies around help desk, your policies around version control. So those are the things that we think probably should live or be strongly influenced by the mobile COE.
Great. I have one last question, just last minute, from Stefan. Should the MCOE be responsible for developing the overall mobility strategy for the company?
Well, that's a good question. And it depends what you want the reach of the COE to be. We're often seeing that the COE is not responsible for the overall mobile strategy of the company, that the COE enables kind of the successful rollout of the mobile strategy. However, for our COEs that we work with that are taking on envisioning tasks or innovation tasks, then it becomes central. They become enablers of that innovation. But overall, mobile strategy is often driven outside of the COE by kind of a group of executives across business lines, and then the results of that strategy then get driven and fulfilled, through the mobile COE.
Great. Thanks, Adam. Just a couple final things. Like I mentioned before at the beginning of this call, the slides for this presentation, as well as the recording of this, will be available on propelics.com/resources later tonight. Also up there is about another 4 or 5 hours of other webinars around IT roadmap for mobile strategy, creating a mobile strategy in a week, how to budget and plan for mobile initiatives, etc. We also do these once a month, and what we really like would hear more from you guys around what else and other types of topics you'd like us to be able to present some of our information on. We're planning on talking some additional areas around building mobile strategy in decentralized areas, as well as talking about the costs that go into mobile application development and some other areas. But we'd like to hear more from you, and so please reach out with us with those. With that, we're ending on time. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll talk to you and see you again on the next webinar. Thank you.